Are you ready, Jesse?
I'm ready.
Welcome to Miss Rachel YouTube channel once again. So tell us your name, where you come from, and where you at now.
Yes, my name is Jesse, and I'm from USA, from a place called Wisconsin. It's near the Great Lakes area. And right now I'm here in Kenya visiting my family and taking it easy for a few weeks. And myself, I'm a Rastafari, a Rasta man. So today I'm going to give you just some information about what is Rastafari.
And what is Rastafari?
So Rastafari is, well, first of all, I'll say Rastafari is the name of a man. You see, the man Rastafari was called Haile Selassie. And that man was the last Christian king, the descendant of King David, by way of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, the king of Ethiopia. And so he's the 225th descendant of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. So in ancient times, the children of Israel, the Ark of the Covenant moved from Jerusalem into Ethiopia after Solomon and the Queen of Sheba had a child. There's a story that you can read called the Kebra Nagast. It's part of the Ethiopian Bible. The Ethiopian Bible is, Ethiopia is the original Christian nation. It's the first Christian nation in the world, yep. And they have the oldest biblical books. They have, for instance, the book of Enoch. They have this book called the Kebra Nagast, which is the glory of the kings. And you can Google those online, or you can find them online as well, translated into English. And so it tells the story of, basically the story of when the Queen of Sheba came to visit Solomon, and she ended up saying she gave Solomon all of his desire. Or he gave her all of her desire, and basically they had a child named Menelek. And Menelek, you probably heard of him. They have hospitals and streets named after Menelek over here in Kenya, and so he was the descendant. So what ended up happening is in those days, in those ancient times, the children of Israel, in Solomon's time, if you read the Bible, his kingdom fell apart at the end of a later part of his life because Solomon started chasing strange women. So one of the commandments was that you're not supposed to go after strange women. So Solomon ended up loving women that corrupted his heart. They didn't have good morality. They didn't have a good culture. So the Queen of Sheba was his first wife. Her name is Makeda. And in Islam, they call her Bilqis. So in any case, she was a good woman. That was his first woman, and they had their firstborn son. And he was the one that inherited the blessings of the firstborn son of Israel, this firstborn son of Solomon. So in those times, Solomon's kingdom broke apart later in his life, and the blessing passed on to his son. And the Most High removed the Ark of the Covenant, and all of those stories you hear in the Bible, what ended up happening is the children of Israel migrated into Ethiopia from Jerusalem, and they ended up mixing with the indigenous Ethiopians of that time, which was people from the Kemetic or Hamitic culture of Ethiopia, or the Nubian kingdom. Which is not just Sudan, but it's the Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, these whole areas in East Africa. That was all part of this ancient kingdom of the Queen of Sheba, even going into Yemen also. And so, so in those times, there was an ancient mixing that took place, and they renewed the kingdom of David after Solomon, after he lost it. It was renewed in a new location in Ethiopia, and that was called like the New Holy Land, or New Jerusalem, or Zion, the heavenly place on earth. So that's ever since that time we've had kings that have been ruling. Even before that, it was queens, and then when when they mixed, then it became kings that were leading the country. And so since that time, there's been a successive lineage of kings that have ruled Ethiopia from the children of Israel, from the tribe of Judah. And those are like the king, we call it like the king of the Jews. Remember, they called Jesus the king of the Jews on the cross, INRI. So the king of the Jews, or the king of Judah, that's the king of Israel. That's the Ethiopian Kings. So those kings maintained the pure culture of good religion, or of the Judeo practices of the original Judaic Messianic culture. And they have the bloodline, and they also have the history of being the first Christians before Europe, before Constantine. There was already Christianity being practiced in Ethiopia. Even in the Bible, you'll find the story of the eunuch, Philip and the eunuch. He baptized the eunuch, which was the first baptism on record after the resurrection, was a eunuch, and he went back into Ethiopia to tell the queen of Ethiopia, Candace, or they call her Kandake. He went back to tell her about Christ, and since that time, the pure form of Christianity has grown in Ethiopia through like monks and priests in the wilderness, in the hills, people that in older times you might identify, they look like Rastas, you know. They took a Nazarite vow oftentimes, according to the book of Numbers, chapter 6, not drinking alcohol, not cutting their hair, trying to make themselves live a good lifestyle closer to God. So that's where some of this culture comes from, is the Nazarene, or remember they said Jesus of Nazareth. So he was a Nazarite. So there's a culture of Nazarites, and it has to do with a way of living, not just a location of Nazareth. It has to do with a way of living. And you'll find that style mentioned in the book of Numbers, and it talks about how those people separated themselves to become closer to God. So in number 1, Rastafari is the descendant, the 225th descendant of that lineage. And he's also known among the people of the earth as the Lion of Judah, and many other names, the King of Zion, the Son of David, the offspring of David. You can find those prophecies in the Bible, Revelation 5:5. Behold, the conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah has come to open the 7 seals. And so there's many different passages, even Christ, he talked about in the end times. He said, you wicked generation of vipers and snakes. He's like, in the end times, the queen of the south, which is the queen of Ethiopia, will rise up and bring to judgment against this wicked nation. For she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And behold, now a greater than Solomon is here. So that's even Christ taught us that in the last days, this is the prophecy that would fulfill in the last days. The queen of the south. The queen is a queen, but it's also a queen representative of the nation. A woman represents a nation. So Ethiopia is that nation, and that's the renewed kingdom of David, the new Jerusalem on earth. And so, as much as Rastafari is a man, the same way in history you find Judah. Judah was a man in the Bible, and people ended up following Judah's cultural practice and way of life, and they became later known as Yehuda, or Jews, or Judah. That's where you get the word Jews from. So those, basically, you find that theme repeated many times in the Bible, where there's a name even of a man like Jacob or Israel. They take the name of a man, and people start following after that way of life according to the instruction and the divine revelations.
It was a lifestyle, not a religion.
Yeah, a lifestyle, a way of life, and it even preceded the man that's known as Rastafari, or Haile Selassie I. The way of life preceded even the man. But the man, Rastafari, is like the culmination, is the end game. It's the final prophecy of the man that was prophesied to sit on the throne of David in these later times, to speak against evil to the whole world. There's another passage in the Bible where it tells you, behold, when he comes, every eye will see him and every ear will hear him, and he'll come even from the east unto the west. So you find Ethiopia is that nation in the east, and even unto the west he was known. And
before we proceed, most of people know Rastafarian as, Jamaican thing, or maybe few African thing, maybe from Ethiopia. How comes you are American and you are a Rastafarian?
Yes, so Rastafari has become known to be associated with Jamaica primarily because Bob Marley, through music, spoke to the whole world and talking about Rastafari. And people loved the message that Bob Marley brought because he was bringing a message of love, of unity, of also of judgment, and also it was biblical. He was telling people of a biblical message, and he was also uplifting oppressed, but specifically African Black people. So in those times, in the early 20th century, you'll find that, through history, we know about colonialism and the slave trade. So Jamaicans now were, rebelling against colonialism, and they were also in the fight for their identity, to know their own history and to not lose their history. So there was many different movements going on in those times that were trying to bring consciousness to Black people, to wake in the West, to wake them up, to make them realize where they come from, where their culture comes from, where their language comes from, where their religion, way of life comes from. So in those earlier times, Jamaica was like a light. It was a smaller light that was leading people into the bigger light.
Yes.
So you find that small island, there was many people who recognized this king in the east that was speaking to all nations of the world. They could all hear him and see him because up until that time, we didn't have TV. We didn't have a way for all people in the world to see somebody or to hear somebody. So many people thought that the prophecy of Christ would be like Peter Pan or like Superman or like X-Men, where somebody's going to come down from the sky, wave a magic wand, and all of a sudden the world is better. But that's not how Christ comes. That's not how any prophet or any priest or any king through any history has ever came. They've never come down waving. They've never come down from the sky and just said, things are fixed. It's always like a man is born from a woman. So in this case, the history repeats itself once again.
Yes.
A man is born from a woman, and he spoke to all the nations of the earth and told them to live righteously, to follow the commandments in the Bible. And every eye could see and every ear could hear because he was speaking at the League of Nations, which is the predecessor to the United Nations. So that means all of the nations of the earth, all of the civilized people that had anything to do with anything, they had cameras, they had video, they recorded these events, and he spoke to them and he preached a good word. And he, the same way, if you listen to what Christ taught us, he said that I'm going to send to you my comforter later on, and he's going to remind you of me and everything. He's going to glorify me. And everything that I've told you, he's going to remind you about me, and he's going to fill in everything that was lost. So once again, Haile Selassie, Rastafari, came as a genetically lineage of the tribe of Judah. So he's from the Messianic, the Jews, and also a Christian man. And he talked about Christ, and he said, live like Christ. So he didn't promote himself. He promoted people to live like Christ. So he glorified Christ, just like the prophecy said he would. And so he did many things. He had many crowns. He went around the world for 40 years on the throne of David. And every civilized country in the world came to his coronation in the 1930s. They brought gifts. They bowed down. They said, you, sir, you're the Lion of Judah. You're the descendant of King David, the one on David's throne. And they all referred to him that way throughout his whole reign. Every country on the earth, when they greeted him, it was official titles, and they introduced him to their own people by such names. Every newspaper, National Geographic, Time Magazine, Chicago Tribune, New York Times, Jerusalem Post, the Kenya papers, every paper in the world that had anything to do with anything, printed these pictures and these stories that were explaining this and showing this to people in the early 20th century. So people could hear and see for the first time the message of this man promoting Christ in an age of corruption, of World War I, World War II, where the world is thought to be in complete doom, where we're going to blow ourselves up, and the atomic bomb is invented, and it's the end times people are feeling, you know. So he came with that good message, and so, you know, back to Jamaica now. Jamaica was like the one that made him to be known even more than the Ethiopians themselves, because through music, the Bible also talks about through music, the new gospel, the new word would be preached, and we would know Christ through a new song, and people would be singing and playing instruments. And so we've come to know about this name and this movement and this man and this history of pure Christianity, pure Judaism, even Islam. The Prophet Muhammad sent the first Muslims to Ethiopia before any other place, when there was only 5 or 10 Muslims in his closest community and they were being persecuted. He told them, leave Arabia, go into Ethiopia. You'll find a righteous king, a righteous land of peace, where the king rules justly and fairly in all matters, and he'll save you. So those early Muslims went to Ethiopia in those times when there was a different king ruling from the throne of David in those generations, from that original Christian Judeo lineage. And that's why even in Islam, there's a specific command for Muslims to never bother the Ethiopians, because the Ethiopians historically have been that Judeo-Christian nation, and they are actually where we find Islam developed their whole idea and concept of religion from. When they went into Ethiopia, they saw the Ethiopians praying, wearing long white robes, having beads, bowing down to the ground 5 times or even 7 times per day.
And to interrupt, when did you get this information? Did you grow up as a Christian or a Rastafarian?
So I grew up as a Christian in the US, and then, you know, when you become an adult, you have to do your own investigations, not just what the church or your parents are telling you. So from that time on, 18, I started to investigate for my own self to know what is the truth of the matter. Where does this Christian story come from? Where does the story of the Messiah and the King of the Jews, where does this come from? And my search through reasoning with different people, reasoning with different Rasta brothers, they started to tell me about the Lion of Judah. You know, I'm sure everybody's seen the red, gold, and green flag with the lion on it. That flag has become even known as like the universal African freedom flag. People even refer to that as like the African freedom colors or the African freedom flag. So that flag also was symbolically used for other nations in Africa after they gained independence, because Ethiopia is the only nation in Africa that was never colonized. So all the other countries were under colonialism at some point. Ethiopia maintained their independence, their language, their religion, their kings, their history. And so that banner, that red, gold, and green, represents the blood. For red, it represents the green for the land, and then the gold for the riches of the country and the people. So that flag was then copied by many different countries of the world and many African countries like Ghana and other countries. After they gained independence, they used Ethiopia's example to make their own flags bear that same colors.
So are there other white Rastafarians?
So anybody can be a Rastafari, but you'll find that it's something that started with the consciousness uplifting of Black people. So in the Bible, there's a story, or there's a prophecy where it says, first to the Jews and then to the Gentiles. So this means that, Black African people are the original Yehuda, the original Jews, the original Judah. And so the king of Judah is an African man in Ethiopia, and the king of Israel. So the people that are going to recognize these prophecies in the last times, first it will be those people, the people of Yehuda, or the Jews, or the original people. Then the other nations of the earth will come to recognize as well. So what you'll find is all the different nations of the earth, you'll find people representing and wearing and defending the red, gold, and green, defending the heritage of the unconquered Ethiopian culture, the pure Christianity. So once people start to investigate, if they're sincere in their religion, then they defend the truth no matter where they find it. So you find that truth is in Ethiopia.
Okay. And then how is Rastafarian connected to creation? Mankind.
Sure.
Creation story.
Sure. So, in the first pages of the Bible, you'll find the story. It mentions Ethiopia, the rivers that run around Ethiopia when it's talking about Eden, when they placed Adam in the garden. So you'll find that whole area is a reference to East Africa, where the rivers are running around Ethiopia and in the general kind of coming up East North Africa. And even if you look out into the coast past Somalia, you have the Gulf of Aden, which is Eden. That's the Gulf of Eden because this land was originally referred to as Eden. And even the Atlantic Ocean, if you look on older maps, the Atlantic is a new name that was a colonial name. The original name on all of the older maps was called the Ethiopic Ocean.
They changed?
Yep, they changed. And even the country of Africa, or not the country, the continent of Africa, was formerly on all the maps, it was represented as being called Ethiopia. There was northern and southern Ethiopia. So on all the older maps, it wasn't Africa. Ethiopia was the continent, and then the capital was that highlands, the highlands of Ethiopia, or even extending like the Great Rift Valley, Kenya, going all through the Rift Valley. Those are like the Great Rift. That's the holy mountains, and you can read about those in the Bible, like in Genesis. And so the creation story now, Rastafari, many people consider it like a religion. A religion is a word that Europeans, colonialism uses to describe culture. So anytime they see people that are indigenous practicing something, they start to call that their religion, but in fact, that's just their culture they're practicing. So it's a way of life. Culture is a way of life, and that way of life comes from the same place that we find Jesus, Isa, Yeshua. He went to go hide with his family when he was an infant, when King Herod was trying to kill him. Here's an example. When I come to Kenya, everybody's looking at me. They're shouting out, what are they saying? What are they saying? Tell me which word. Which word are they saying?
No,
when people are seeing me, Muzungu, Muzungu. So do you think that if Christ and his family were white people, they could go hide in Africa from King Herod?
By the way, why do we have like these symbols of Jesus or God as a white?
Yeah, that's because of colonialism. That's because of colonialism. So through colonialism and through the Catholic Church, they ended up changing the image. The earliest images of Christ show him as being black with afro hair. And so you'll find all the older images. Even the Buddha is black with afro puffs. So later on, through colonialism, through the Catholic Crusades, and that whole perversion of Christianity, they started to conquer the world through force and through brainwashing, psychological mind control. So they want you to believe that Jesus, or the one that they're saying is Christ or God or the holiest one, they're trying to make you believe he's a white man. So therefore, you start to see white people as the good family of the earth, and black people are just savages and monkeys and the things that they've been telling people to make them feel racist,
I think it's affecting us even to date.
Even to date.
white people are seen as superiors
Yeah.
to black people.
Yeah, and
No, even not even vice versa. White
Yeah.
people are seen as superiors in this world.
yeah, in this whole world.
Black people.
Even here, if just from my own experience, I noticed how in Kenya and other places, generally, people here even treat your own countrymen worse. You treat foreigners better than your own countrymen. So it's like people are brainwashed into this idea that white people are so good and have all these things to offer, when in fact, wake up. Those same white people, not all white people, but I'll say primarily the groups that were involved in those colonial slave trades was first those pale Arabs. Those racist pale Arabs, they were the ones that were doing slave trade first, castrating the men and raping the women and doing all of that. Later, you find that those people that are Ashkenazi Jews, those people that call themselves Jews and are not Jews, they come from Ashkenaz. In the Bible, Ashkenaz was the descendant of Gomer, and Gomer was the descendant of Japheth, and Japheth was the son of Noah. Noah had 3 sons, Ham, Shem, Japheth. So when they talk about Semitic, anti-Semitic, or Shemitic culture, there's a misidentification. If you look up the word Semitic, the definition of Semitic is actually a subcategory of Afro-Asiatic culture and language. So to be a Shemitic, you have to come from an Afro-Asiatic culture. So the people that are in Jerusalem nowadays that descend from these Europeans, from the Ashkenazis that come from actually an area towards Ukraine, those people, and they are not genetically the tribe of Judah. They don't have any historical blood connection whatsoever to the people in the Bible that relate to the tribes of Israel or Judah. They come from Japheth. So they're not even Shemites, or they're not even Shemitic themselves. But if you try to call them out on their lies, they'll immediately play this game and they'll tell you you're being anti-Semitic. And then they play this race game to continue this identity theft.
Then back to how it connected to creation, finish that.
Yeah, so the creation now is, first of all, if you study science, or if you just study even the Bible, if you study this, you'll find that all humanity, all human beings have a genetic mother from Africa. They trace back to an ancient African black woman. So you'll find that the story in the Bible, it tells you Eve is the mother of all living. So now it means that Eve is symbolic of a nation. Adam is symbolic of a nation. So what I'll say is that Eve, meaning the black woman, is responsible for populating all the nations of the earth. So you'll find that the different nations that you see, people that have black curly hair, you'll go into the Middle East, you'll look at people like Osama bin Laden, for instance, is a face you might remember. People that have black beards, brown eyes, black hair with curls, but not necessarily Afro hair. And they have more of a brown tone to their skin, They're not just so pale. But you'll find no matter where you go, all people have trace back to an African woman, but you'll find generally as you go north out of Africa, the people start getting lighter. They become more brown. Their hair starts becoming more straight, and so the story in the Bible of the creation story now is like you have to examine this for yourself. But African people have been on the earth, on all parts of the earth, and every place of the earth, for as long as time is going, and time is longer than 6,000 years on this earth.
And where can black people find this information? Because I'm also surprised to learn that the generations across the world comes from black women.
Mm-hmm. So so number one, just go type it on Google. go do some Google searches for one, and you'll find this story, and it's confirmed through all different science and genetic testing of all people. And so, so here's another component to this whole thing that people don't want to discuss, which is that sub-Saharan African people, sub-Saharan African people is like, I'll say, pure 100% pure-blooded African people are the only people that are not mixed with other ancient races of man. Meaning, like you've heard of Neanderthal, you've heard of other man, like there's another one called Denisovin, and they have these other ancient man. So, for instance, most European people have between 1% to 3% of Neanderthal DNA. And Chinese people or Asian people have like 1% to 3% of a different archaic or ancient man that was called Denisovin. They have 1% to 3% mix. And even Native Americans, those Native Americans, they look similar to Chinese with long black hair, and they don't grow much facial hair, but even those people, they have like a percentage of mixing of 1% to 3%. But so the only people that are unmixed is sub-Saharan African people, who are those pure black people that don't have any mixing. So that was like the original lineage of humanity. So what ended up happening at some point now is there's different stories in the Bible that can tell you about the creation. But first, the Bible tells you that God created man, male and female. He created them. So there was the creation of man that was already existing. Then he created Adam and Eve. The story of Adam and Eve came, and God said, we're going to make him to, basically, once he ate the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they said, man has become like us to know duality, to know good and evil, and therefore, unless he eats from the tree of life, he's going to die. So what that means in general is, God is good, is 100% good. God is not a duality. God is pure good. There's no evil there. But when you're a child, you only know good. But as you get older, you learn evil in this world. People teach you evil. So once you learn the duality of good and evil, now you're corrupted somehow. You've been tainted. So now your mind tends to wander towards evil. You're not innocent like a child where you only are thinking about good. You're stuck in a duality where you're knowing good and evil, so you can't bring yourself out of that mind state to put yourself back in the good with God. Because remember, in the beginning, man was one with God, and God walked in the garden with man, and there was no separation. It was only after they turned their back on God's instruction that they started to feel guilty. And then they separated from God, and then they left, they ended up leaving the Garden of Eden. So you end up having these stories about the out of Africa migration. People are leaving the garden, going out. Some people ended up leaving the Garden of Eden in Africa. They came out into other places of the world where it's cold, where there's other things going on, deserts. And over time, different things happen because along with, there's some diversity that comes as a result of not evolution, but it's not like people don't just turn, they don't just change. Like you can see albinos, right? Albinos are born with pale white skin, but they still have the appearance of being Africans. They still have those basic features, whether it's a jawline or lips or facial construction or whatever it is, body style, they still look like Africans. So there's a difference between albinos and other people that's considered white or Gentile nations. So the Bible tells us the story of creation, where the church tells you the world is 6,000 years old since Adam. But if you investigate this story, The only thing that's 6,000 years old is the history of white people, because white people weren't on the earth prior to 6,000 years approximately ago. So before that, it was only black people on the earth. And if you go look this up scientifically, they're going to also confirm there was no white nation, there was no white country, there was no white writing system, no white city. There was black people living everywhere. So how did other people come to be on the earth? Well, Eve is the mother of all living. So there ended up being a mixings that happened. And through, well, I'll say not just one, but on different events, there was mixings that happened where it was genetic manipulation that happened. So in the Bible, it tells you in the book of Enoch, and also in other stories in the Bible of the sons of God that came down to the earth, and they mated with the women, and they made different people. And even that's one of the stories. Even the story of Adam, and the story, it says that Eve had two seeds. You remember she said that the seed of the serpent and the seed of Eve would always be going head to head against each other, you know? So there was the seed that came from Adam, and then there was the seed that's called the serpent seed. So the serpent is representative of, they want to say a snake in the garden, but it wasn't necessarily a snake. It was more like, to be honest, there's like, there's beings that are, maybe even in your own culture, you've heard about stories of reptilian type of beings, or beings that appear to have a reptile appearance, that live either in the water or live underneath the earth. And many stories in all cultures have these stories of these beings. So when they talk about this serpent, it wasn't a snake, it was a serpent race. The same way we're a primate race. Well, snakes, you can also have a race of walking humanoid serpent-featured beings. Those creatures are even seraphim. In the Bible, it talks about seraphim, which is a caste, a type of angels that are serpent beings. They're not all evil. Some of them, but they're ancient. These are like an ancient creation that even precedes humanity as we know it, you know? And so the thing is, the serpent was smarter than any other beast in the field. So the serpent was like one of those beings, and they used genetic manipulation to breed with Eve. Whether it was when they said they put Adam to sleep, for instance, there's the story about putting Adam to sleep, taking his rib, and then you create Eve. That they didn't take his rib; they took bone marrow from his rib, the place where you get DNA from, and they used high science, the same way that they're using it nowadays to do cloning and to do grafting of different animals and things together. They used that in those ancient times to make the woman from the man's prototype. So in the same way, genetic manipulation occurred in other ways by the mixing of the seed of a serpent race into the race of the original black humanity. So then, when that happened, you ended up having this story of the serpent and Adam and Eve and the whole story that we know. But the way it's playing out is that, you know, to get into the whole story is quite a story, but in general, but in general, you can just examine this and you'll see. Just look around the earth, for instance. Which are the people that are responsible for doing the most slavery? Which are the people that are responsible for doing colonialism? Which are the people that are responsible for this idea of racism and like this white supremacy idea? You know, this whole thing came as a result of Satan corrupting African people in the beginning. So what I can say about that is, you know, Christ came at a time, and he said, "Oh, I've been sent only to the house of Israel. I've been sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But then the woman from Canaan came up to him and begging him to heal her from Canaan, the Canaanite woman, and she's like she wanted Christ to heal her, and he's like the disciples were saying, no, leave that woman alone, she's a Canaanite. So at first he ignored her, and then she kept begging him to she said, heal me, help me, and he's like, don't you know I've only come to save the lost sheep of the house of Israel? And she said, oh, it's true, but even the dogs eat from the crumbs that fall off the master's table. So basically, the parable there was that even other people, if they humble themselves and recognize the truth of God, they can even eat the word of God and be saved. And so there's another story in the Bible where it talks about, in the New Testament, the grafting in of the Gentiles. There's a chapter called the grafting in of the Gentiles where it talks about the wild olive tree and the natural olive tree. So the natural olive tree was the original black African genetic stock of people. And it says that God broke off the branch, one of those branches, and said that he ended up taking a wild olive tree and putting it onto that branch and grafting it back in. And he said, and likewise, he can also take that original branch that was broken off and graft it back into the original people once again. So you're seeing this story basically of, it's like the story of the prodigal son. Prodigal son was that there was two sons, and the one son stayed with the father the whole time doing his will, and then the other son went off and did corruption, and then came back to the father apologetically saying, I've done wrong, I've come back to you to humble myself, accept me back. The father celebrated when the son came back, and that's the story of the prodigal son. So in the same way, the other nations of the earth, the Gentile nations of the earth, are those nations that are coming back into humanity, coming back into Africa. So it's only for, like I was explaining to you earlier, when we were talking about interracial relationships and things like that. It's like when you see people coming, typically what you call either white people, European people, mixing with black people, it's not supposed to be whereby when they mix, black people lose their culture and their way of life and start to become westernized, whitewashed. It's supposed to be the other way around. Those people that don't have culture, that don't have a good culture, are supposed to be coming back, being grafted back in to the natural branch. So that's another symbolism of the Bible that you can read and interpret.
Do you think it's the reason you got also married to a black woman to get
because
to the culture?
Yeah, because in America, in those places, there is no culture. You see, homosexuality is the culture, and many types of immorality that are leading to arrogance and slavery and white supremacy ideology. So all of those people that are living those type of things must either die off, or they must come back where they came from, to the original place of their African mother. So it's only when people realize there is no white people. There's only people that are mixed in different shades, but all traced back to a black woman. So the sooner you realize that, then you can't deny the fact remains you're also an African somehow, some way. So to deny that is to deny your own self, and to deny that makes racism happen.
Yeah. For those who loves history, I think after listening to this video, they will find out.
Research yourself. It's all on Google.
Search themselves. But I would have to know, why is Rastafarian important?
So it's important,
Easy. I feel amazing. Why is Rastafarian important?
Sure, it's important because you see, in this world, primarily we have different so-called religions, and all of the religions are talking about the end of times, where there's going to be a Messiah type figure that's going to come, and he's going to symbolize the union and the restoration of peace on the earth. whether you're in the Judaic culture, Muslims or Christians, they're all waiting for this Messianic Messiah figure to come. So Rastafari is that figure. He's the one. So in terms of the bloodline, he comes from the tribe of Judah, representing the pure tradition of the real Jews. In terms of Christians, he comes from the original Christians, the original Christian nation, the original church. In terms of Muslims, like I was explaining earlier, the first Muslims gained all of their knowledge from visiting those Ethiopians and seeing how they practiced religion. And so you'll find that even aside from descending from the Queen of Sheba and Solomon and King David, the imperial king's family of Ethiopia, through Haile Selassie, his wife Empress Menen, they also descend from Prophet Muhammad. And so even Muslims have to acknowledge that there's a lineage in Ethiopia that even the Prophet Muhammad's lineage lives on through. And so there's a reason for that, because Ethiopia was the ancient mixing pot of civilization.
So it's that part of Ethiopia. You can talk about why Ethiopia is
special.
history. People can find more information for themselves. If they want to get more of this story, they can come and find you on the YouTube channel. Who's Batali, sir?
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
So if anybody wants to do their own investigation, don't take my word for it.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you a couple keys. These are called keys of David. If you check out the Psalms, those are the keys of David that's been promised. So if you research, Ethiopia is the one that has the keys of David. They've got the keys to language, the keys to the Bible, the keys to history, the keys to culture. All of those things that you're seeking, whether it's religion, history, language, it all comes back to this East Africa area where there was these ancient kingdoms of good people living a good life. So do your own research on Google. Go check on YouTube for some of these information that I'm giving you. And don't hate the messenger, because it doesn't matter if God comes in any color, but the fact is humanity comes black. So until you realize that, somehow you're lost in some other things, and you have probably some confusion or some racism in your heart. Just go check it out yourself, because people that are real Christians don't care about where the stories originate from. They just want the truth. The truth is in Ethiopia, East Africa. Check it out.
Are there books maybe too?
Yes, so some of the books that I would advise: number one, online, type in the word Kebra and then Nagast, Kebra Nagast online. You're going to find the Ethiopian book that tells the whole story of the Queen of Sheba and Solomon, and how that this lineage started the renewing of David's kingdom. The book of Enoch was originally part of the Bible, but it was removed by Western Christianity. So only the original Church of Ethiopia has in their biblical files the book. Other Christians have cast away the book, because the book tells you the same things that I'm telling you now, and it tells you the story of how Africa relates to the Bible. So in a Western white supremacy world, they don't want you to have that information, because it goes against their narrative of white supremacy. They can't very well make black people out to be monkeys and slaves if people were informed that all civilization and culture come from Africa, from the Nile Valley culture even. So do your own research. If I can research it and come to the understanding, you can also come to the same conclusions.
Okay, where can people find you maybe for more details?
So me, have a church that be organized for Rastafari to be more recognized, not just disrespected by government. On Lion of Judah House of Rastafari on Facebook. You can also check me out on YouTube at Rasta Joint. And have a YouTube. I have not a YouTube, but I have a webpage called rastajoint.org. But I have to reconstruct the page, so it should be ready soon. It's in this month. And if anybody has questions, you can link me on any of those sites. And I also have WhatsApp. You can link on WhatsApp, 608-515-2866, from America, so it's +1. So if anybody needs to reach out, you can also reach out that way.
Yeah.
And feel free.
Yeah. So for the audience who'll be watching this video, you want to learn more of the history of religion and all those things, please go to his channel and ask him.
Check it out. It's your own history,
Yeah,
and it's
it's your
the
history.
history of the world. So there's nothing to be ashamed of,
Yeah.
disappointed. Just go check it out.
I'm also learning, yeah.
Mhm.
I'm also learning from you, you know.
And you know, everybody
But
loves
I've
Rasta.
read some things before, so I clearly connect what you're saying.
See?
I have learned it's all about spirituality, it's not about religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Religion is just a word that they use to confuse you, but you know, Christ said God is a spirit and we must worship him as such. So when you come to God, come in a spiritual way.
Yeah. Thank you for being in this channel.
Okay, thank you
Looking
so
forward
much.
to watch to us. Okay.
I appreciate it, yeah?
Thank you.